Hey guys, it's Chelsea from The Financial Diet, and I'm coming to you from my slightly different and incredibly hot home office because of a series of unfortunate events. We do not have our AC installed yet, and it is indeed July in New York City. So if I look incredibly shiny, that's not because I'm wearing a lot of Glossier products, it's because I'm dying. And today I wanted to do something a little fun and different, which is talking about the purchases that I thought would make me happy, but absolutely did not. These purchases might be totally different from the ones that you have made, or maybe some of them overlap, and you can feel like, at least I'm not the only idiot who wasted money on that. But even if you don't see yourself at all in my regrettable purchases, hopefully you can take away the broader message, which is that when we buy things with the intention of making us happy, often what we are thinking about is more external factors, like what other people will think, or meeting their standards rather than ours. So though it's not a perfect science, and you may ultimately buy things that you don't find make you as happy as you thought they would, it's good to reflect on the items that were total fails in this regard. And before you jump in the comments to be like, money doesn't buy happiness, first of all, on a very literal level, a baseline of financial security is actually a crucial factor for experiencing happiness, because it's difficult to feel happy if on a day-to-day basis you're worried about being able to feed your children, or stay in a home, or go to the doctor if you get sick. But beyond that, there are many things that we can purchase that bring us joy. I'm sure that you can remember trips you've taken, meals you've eaten, even items you may have purchased that spark real joy within your heart. I know I can, and it's not because I'm some dead-eyed capitalist. It's because there's lots of wonderful and beautiful and joyous things in life, and sometimes you want to buy them. But sometimes you buy them and it's a complete mistake. And here are 7 of those mistakes. Things I thought would make me happy, but totally didn't. Number 1 is an apartment in a cool neighborhood. Now, when I first moved to New York, I really didn't know anything about the city, and our apartment hunt was mostly based on the fact that I was going to be working at a locally based office, whereas my now husband was going to be traveling 4 days a week for work, so it didn't really matter so much where he lived. My office at the time was in a very cool neighborhood in Brooklyn, and the fact that it was located there and so many people talked it up and magazines were writing about it and the people seemed so hip and chic made us decide on this neighborhood. But the thing is, all of those magazine profiles and hip young people and companies like mine setting up shop there meant that it was incredibly expensive for what it was. For only slightly less than we pay today for a nice 2-bedroom in a very respectable but much less cool neighborhood, we had a 1-bedroom that was railroad style with a bathroom just off the kitchen, which shudder, and no windows for 90% of the living space. So unless you were at one end of the apartment or the other, you were basically living in darkness. Now, I'm not gonna say that it's the worst apartment we could have gotten. Clearly, people live in worse spaces, especially in New York City. Our bathroom was just off the kitchen, but we didn't have a shower in our kitchen, as some people in this city actually do. But the quality of life in that apartment was dramatically less than it would have been if we'd broadened our search a little bit. Among other things, we were living directly atop a bar that had frequent live music, although it did occasionally provide entertaining people watching because a lot of people liked to break up in the street. But either way, the coolness of the neighborhood was a very big factor in our choice at the time. And although I didn't realize it, it was a factor that was starting to outweigh other things, such as how is it actually going to feel to live here? And it's easy to feel like, oh, I won't spend that much time in your apartment. But A, you do, and B, if your apartment is a place that you really enjoy being in, you will often find yourself wanting to spend more time there and kind of inherently spending less money as a result because you're just going out less. And more importantly, all that cool stuff in the cool neighborhood with the cool people, you can always get to. It's not as though it's suddenly inaccessible to you. And beyond that, part of growing up is realizing that you can carve out a life that makes sense for you in many different places. As I mentioned, our current neighborhood is a lot less cool and has a lot less options in terms of like hip new restaurants and bars and coffee shops and stuff like that. But frankly, on many levels, that's a good thing, because if I had as much access to those things, I would be spending way more money on them. And what is most important to me about my home is the way I feel in it. I feel much happier in this place than I ever did in that one. And even if you're someone who's not huge on spending time in your apartment, treating it as a total disregard and being there just for the neighborhood only guarantees that that will increase, and that you'll constantly be looking for excuses to get out of your apartment, which means, long story short, cool apartment did not spark joy. Number 2 is a strange one, but it's a small item that represents a much bigger phenomenon, and that is Ugg boots. You might be thinking to yourself, Chelsea, you're so cool and wonderful. Why would you wear Ugg boots? I know I'm thinking that. But I should state that the Ugg boots I purchased were not this year, they were in 2006. This was at a time when I was just ending high school, and I certainly didn't have access to a lot of money, and my parents were rightfully like, we are not spending $200 on those ugly boots that you can't even wear in any kind of inclement weather. But I went to a very preppy, very waspy high school where wearing Ugg boots and at the time like a Lacoste polo shirt and like a frayed Abercrombie jean mini skirt pulled down way past your hip bones, like way too far down, was the look. I used to fantasize about Ugg boots, and I'm going to very shamefully tell you the story of not only how I acquired the Ugg boots, but what happened to them and what I continued to do with them anyway. So basically, I stole my mother's credit card, went to this shoe store downtown in the town where I lived, bought them with the credit card, pretended not to know what that charge was, even though obviously my parents weren't shopping there and I had a new $200 pair of shoes on my feet, proceeded to get grounded for a month for stealing the credit card. And then as soon as that month was up, I wore my beautiful, like high-rise chestnut Ugg boots to a party at a friend's house where there was a bonfire. And to warm my feet, because it was a cold winter night, I put my feet too close to the bonfire, and the bottom of my Ugg boots melted. So my already not all-weather Ugg boots were now like incredibly uncomfortable on the bottom because they were all like melted and distorted and like kind of porous. And I continued to wear them for an entire year because I was so excited to finally have cool girl shoes. Now, this is a tragic story on so many levels, and it started with me stealing my mother's credit card. So really, did I deserve anything better? No. But I was so sure in that moment that those Ugg boots were going to make me feel great about myself. And honestly, as dark as this might sound, I still just felt like the poor girl, but with Ugg boots. And obviously part of that was exacerbated by the fact that after a certain amount of time, they were all fucked up on the bottom and terrible to wear. But even when they were brand new, I kind of felt like an imposter in my shoes. And although Ugg boots are in no way on the same level as a lot of designer items, it has very much been a lesson for me ever since, with a few rare exceptions, that it is never worth it to buy these designer items, especially with all the labels all over them, because you really just feel like yourself in those things. It doesn't suddenly make you feel like you belong in the club of people who wear this sort of thing. And trust me, no one who's really a connoisseur of those types of things is gonna mistake you looking really awkward with your, Gucci belt or whatever for one of them. In many ways, I feel kind of lucky that I had this experience both young and on an item that's really, in the grand scheme of things, not as expensive as a lot of these items. Because ultimately, it gave me that confidence to make the less expensive but better for me choice on so many things. My wedding dress, for example, was $80, and then I spent $45 on getting it tailored. And I had no weird feelings about not getting a fancy person wedding dress, because I knew that what mattered was how it looked on me and how I felt in it. And if it wasn't for that story of the Ugg boots and how I realized that they didn't make me feel any better than I did before I had them, plus obviously I got in so much trouble and they got destroyed, I don't know that I would have felt the same. Number 3 is diet foods / my vegan till 6 phase. I gained like 30-ish pounds between the age of like 21 and like 24. And when I was initially trying to lose some of that weight, I tried all kinds of different things that were like pretty short-term, not great solutions. One of them was eating a lot of like the diet bars and drinking the shakes and all that stuff. Spoiler alert, they're basically just sugar, and it left me hungry all the time. And I would have like a full day of eating just like diet products and then go home and eat whatever I wanted anyway. And categorically, every single one of those items I've ever bought has been an enormous waste of money. But I also did something that's called vegan till 6, where no surprise there, you eat vegan until 6 p.m. And I will say that on an ethical level, I do think making sure to make meat less of a crutch of your diet is a very good thing. And working to a place where you can limit more and more of the meat you're eating to more sustainably and ethically produced meat is a great thing as well. But I was explicitly doing this for weight loss. And the thing about it is that A, you can eat complete garbage while still being vegan, which I often did because I wasn't at all changing my palate or the kinds of foods I wanted to be eating. But also B, I spent a ton of money on vegan versions of things I wanted to be eating, like vegan bacon and vegan cheese and like all this vegan shit, which first of all completely defeats the purpose if you're just going to be eating the real versions of those things after 6 p.m., like wait till 6. But also, they are incredibly expensive. So if this is not a part of your ongoing lifestyle or something that you're using because you are, for example, vegan 7 days a week and want a little bit of that now and then to enjoy, you should never spend money on that stuff. And I found personally that I was never happier with that food than I would have been just having like a great like harvest salad. But also like I would just eat like a 1,200 calorie vegan burrito for lunch and be like, why am I not losing weight? All of this to say, if you are buying specific foods in order to be a magic bullet for you to transform your body, rather than just rethinking the totality of how you eat, you're making a mistake. Number 4 is unpaid internships. Now, like many of you, there were phases in my life where between the gas money, the parking, the signups, the college credit, all that stuff, I was paying a lot of money out of pocket to do free work for companies. And one of the results of that is that TFD never has and never will use unpaid interns. We actually don't even have interns at all. But if we did, they would not be unpaid because it is completely unethical and abusive and horrible. And plus, it limits your candidate pool to people who can afford to work for free, which in New York City basically means the children of millionaires. But all of that aside, at the time, like many young people, I thought that it was the only way to eventually work my way into a job that I wanted. And the worst part is that at the time, I wasn't even really all that sure of what I wanted to be doing. I knew some of the things I liked and didn't like. I knew some of the basic skill sets that I had that could potentially be marketed, but I was really just taking the unpaid internships that were available to me because as a community college student living in a suburb of Maryland, I can't exactly say that companies were chomping at the bit to have me work with them. So I paid for unpaid internships, and I can say basically without exception that all of them were not worth it. And some of you may be saying, well, you took a very specific career path that is different from what you were doing in those internships, and maybe they would have helped you more if you had stayed on those career paths. And to that I say, maybe. But of all the people I know who have done unpaid internships, very, very few will say that it was those unpaid internships that really gave them either that key entryway into the door or a ticket to a much better paying job. In fact, many are held on the hamster wheel of these unpaid internships with constant promises for eventual payment or a better role that never really materialize. It's not a perfect rule, but generally speaking, if a company is willing to benefit off of the unpaid labor of exploited young people in order to make their operations function, they're probably not the most ethical people to begin with. So putting a ton of faith in what they will be doing for your career is a little naive. And while some job paths may sort of inherently require these unpaid internships, making sure to be as opportunistic about them as possible is key. That means using them for exactly what they're worth and not giving them more of your life. And whether or not you like it, you'll have to fix a deadline to yourself on when you must be doing paid work, even if that means changing your position in the career field slightly. Because you can end up on that hamster wheel of unpaid or severely underpaid work for years. And if you're one of those millionaire children in New York who gets to be an unpaid intern for a magazine until you're 25, well then why are you watching The Financial Diet? You could do whatever you want and you'll be fine. Number 5 is music festivals. So if you know Chelsea in 2019, which you guys do, we're friends, you would not ever expect that I'm the kind of person who used to go to music festivals. And you would be right to think that. My wardrobe is basically entirely Banana Republic. I don't love loud noises. I think crowds make me anxious, so on and so forth. There's actually a bar in New York City where everyone has to whisper, like you can't go above a certain volume or the bartender will like really harshly shush you. And that's like the best bar ever. But I used to be someone who followed the herd in a big way. That meant impressing the dudes I was dating who were often into music festivals and being with the friends who weren't even all that into me, but who loved music festivals too. So through a combination of just like social pressure and insecurity and crushes and the fact that it was like an era of music festivals, although that still seems to be going on, I went to a lot of music festivals. And on some level, although I knew in many ways that they were not for me, I did kind of feel like they would make me happy. Because that's how they're pitched. They're like a young person rite of passage. Everyone's supposed to go to them. They pitch themselves as being so fun and accessible to everyone and having something for everyone's tastes. And it seems like the cool thing to do, especially when you're quasi-dating a guy who's really into music festivals and sells you on them. But in every single case, there was a point during the music festival experience where I was standing in some kind of like dirt patch and I was just like dying of sun poisoning and dehydration and too much alcohol and disorientation. And I was just like, I have this overwhelming feeling of like, what am I doing here? How much effing money am I spending on this? How did I get to this place in my life? Who are these people? Why am I here? It was awful. And every time I remember that moment of clarity that was like, this is bad. This is a bad experience. Everything about it is negative. There's no, like, even for every like one act that you want to see, there's like 10 that you're like, why am I having to hear this band that I hate at like full volume? Why can't I like get through? Why are there people moshing in the line for sandwiches? Like, it's chaos. I don't like it. And honestly, if you're one of those people who loves music festivals and they spark joy for you, have at it, enjoy, post your Instagrams, get your likes, wear your flower crowns. But for many of us, music festivals are a nightmare. And yet we can easily be sucked in by how fun they seem, how ubiquitous they are, and how they pitch themselves as like the ultimate youth experience. And we're supposed to spend on experiences, not things, right? Wrong. When it's music festivals, wrong. For me anyway. And on a very similar note, number 6 is trips to see guys when I was broke. I'm not even gonna get into this one because it's self-explanatory, but long story short, if going to see some guy is going to put you into credit card debt, not worth it. Pretend like it's 1864 and be pen pals until one of you has money. Lastly, number 7, and this one's gonna be a bit controversial, is college. Dun dun dun. Now let's get this all out of the way. Yes, I went to a community college and then school in France, so my experience was not the same like rah-rah college football, homecoming, frat party college experience that you might have had. Let's also get out of the way that I did not end up graduating college and have never used my degree. But what is undeniable is that those experiences do not make me all that unique. In fact, only about 27% of people are currently holding jobs directly related to their college degree. And when you think about the fact that not everyone even goes to college, the amount of people for whom it was a direct 1-to-1 ratio starts to decline. And of course, there are many benefits to going to college that have nothing to do with directly working in that field. And unfortunately, many jobs require that college degree, even if they don't even really necessarily care what it was in. So yes, college can be practical and useful, although I would argue that it is much less useful than it is often pitched to 18-year-olds who are signing away their financial futures to attend it. So the utility of it should be taken with its own grain of salt. But I'm specifically here speaking of the happiness that college provided me. And yes, again, I did not have the golden college experience that a lot of people did, but I was extremely active in extracurriculars. I lived off campus with roommates. I started my own club. I got to live abroad doing it. So I had many of the cool college things that most people would identify with. And while I won't say that none of it was a happy experience, a lot of it was, it did not make me happy in the way that I imagined it to and expected it to. Because college isn't just sold to us as a way to further our career and educational prospects, it's sold to us as the ultimate life experience. It's sold to us more about the way it makes you feel and the social elements of it than it really is about the learning. When I was looking at the schools I wanted to go to, if I'm being honest, I was mostly concerned with what campus life would have been like, or how I imagined myself there, less about what it could potentially do for my future. And while yes, I did make some great friends and had great experiences, no question that I had more great experiences and made more lasting friends when I was out of college and able to really figure myself out as a young adult on my own path rather than constricted to a campus. This is not to say you shouldn't go to college, of course. If college is right for you in your future, you should go. What it is to say is to really deeply consider what the college dream that you are being sold means, what you're really expecting to get out of it, and how much of the value of college is more about how much fun you imagine you'll have than what it's really going to do for you. Because if you're looking at taking tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars out to pay for it, or even just paying it up front if you're lucky enough to do so, that is a really, really meaningful, life-changing amount of money. So spending all or part of it on the idea that you want to go to really fun parties and make great friends is almost invariably a mistake. Because I can tell you one thing, having not had the the traditional college experience. It is possible to find all of these kinds of joys and happiness without that traditional campus life. And while college may indeed end up making you happy, that shouldn't be the reason you go into debt for it. Because college should be about setting yourself up for a better financial life, not about ruining it. As always, guys, thank you for watching, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button and to come back every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday for new and awesome videos. Bye!